Understanding Mother Stories podcast with Adeline Dubreuil. Your 10 minutes to talk about mothering and matrescence. Hello, Mama. Worrying is quite natural for everyone and especially for parents. And because often enough moms carry most of the mental load and responsibilities of parenting, then we, the mom, start worrying all the time. We worry about our child's health, their future, if we are making the right decisions for them, or even the decisions that we make for ourselves. And when you get stuck in this spiral, then your worries might even piggyback each other. The problem with worries is that they often lead to chronic stress or even anxiety. So even if it seems like they can help us, unless you can analyze the worry, find a solution and act on it, then the worry itself is pretty much useless. And it's actually bad for our mental peace. So I have two types of solutions for those of you who deal with constant worry. And they are solutions I have learned and experienced since I have become a mom. And why did it feel like the worries had to be dealt with as I became a mom? Well, because moms have plenty of worries due to the heaviness of the responsibility that comes with being a parent. I'll tell you about these different ways to handle worry that I have encountered, and then I'll also tell you as we go my mama story and how it turned out for me with each of them. So, one of the first solution was coming from a kind of like meditation app podcast that I listened to a while back. When it came to worries, they were saying that first, you have to realize that usually the worries are controlling you and they're also controlling your thought process. So for them, the solution is just to ignore the worries. With this method, they basically tell you that worries are useless to you, that they actually only lead to stress, and that it's 100% not helpful, and they just tell you to let it go. Now, I find this is a great way to do it. I think part of it is true. Some of our worries are really not serving us, so realizing that and choosing to let them go is a great way in theory. We also know that it's not that simple necessarily all the time. Personally, trying to do that worked for some worries, but definitely not for others. And as a mom and also an entrepreneur who carries a lot of worries and responsibilities, I find it ended up leading to a little like procrastination, and you will see why and why the next one worked better for me. So the second way to deal with worry is actually twofold. I have encountered two ways to do this, and I think it's very personal to you and your life to choose one or the other way. I call it worry batching. One of the options comes from Danae Barahona, who I followed a workshop with years ago, and she was talking about worry batching once a week. So she suggested letting go of the worries when they show up in your head by telling yourself, I can't worry about this now. I will keep that for my worry hour. And you basically schedule 1 hour every week on a scheduled day to think about your worries. So if the week is busy, you have worries coming and going, you brush them off and tell yourself you'll worry about that on Sunday at 5, for example. This way, you stop obsessing about certain worries that come and go, but still get to deal with them. And what I liked with this one, and that's my personal take on it, it is that you take this hour to think about stuff, and it's a time and an hour for you. And some worries you will have forgotten, which shows that they were not worth the worry anyway in the first place. And for the ones that you are faced with, then you can decide if there is anything you can do about it. So what I ask myself is like, well, okay, this is a worry, this is what's happening, what can I do about it? Can I do something about it? If I can't, I just kind of like breathe through it, process the feelings that the worries bring, and through either breathing or movement, I just let them go. Now, the ones that I can act on, I can make a plan to deal with them. What can I do to act on this? And I'm trying not to delay acting on it and procrastinate on things I might have pushed aside just because it's a fear and worry. So in this regard, it might be part of seeing what you can actually act on, what you have power on, and decide on what the next step is to act on the how and the what and the why you worry. So that's one example of the worry batching. The other way to do worry batching, comes from a psychologist whom unfortunately I can't remember the name, and it was, I had a conversation with my husband about it. But basically he was saying that, same thing, you have some worries coming up, you acknowledge the worry when it shows up, you brush it off for later, and you do a worry thinking like an hour before you go to bed. Now, you might be wondering, but why doing that an hour before you go to bed? Well, first, because it might be the only time that you actually have time to be with yourself and think about things more clearly. But the real why is because for some people, the minute you put the head on the pillow is when the worries and the thoughts start racing. And it actually stops you from actually sleeping, or even worse, it wakes you up in the middle of the night and keep you up, which leads to insomnia, which we know is not necessarily healthy long-term and definitely does not lead to a patient, respectful mothering because you're so tired all the time. Hence, you're not in power of your emotional regulation. And this also leads to extra worry and anxiety. Now, if you take a time every evening to think about what worries you, you acknowledge the worry, you associate the emotions that you have with the worry, and you decide if you can act on it or not. If not, same thing than earlier, you breathe through it and you choose to let it go. I'm not saying it's easy. Well, that's the best way. Just brush it off and say, I can't do anything about this. I'm just gonna let it go. You breathe, I let go, and you can imagine the worry just going away with your breath when you exhale. Now, the worries that you can act on, make a plan on how to deal with this situation that worries you, and even maybe write things down. I personally have found a balance between the meditating through the worry batch hour or journaling about it. So then I kind of have a written plan on what to do to deal with this specific situation that has been worrying me. So as you see, whatever it is that worries us, we have ways to deal with it. So when it comes to the first one, I really like the idea of the brushing off the worries. As a busy mom, I have to deal with some of them, though I can't just brush it off all the time. And if I don't, they would have a way to come back and bite me, okay? Which leads to anxiety anyway. So I think it might be feasible for some people to just brush off their worries and just leave them aside. And it might be feasible, especially for people who don't necessarily have a lot of responsibilities. But if you want, try it, and that's a first step for you, please do. Now, if you feel like worry batching, whether it's the weekly option or the daily option, it's more of an option for you, I invite you to try either solution of the weekly batching or the daily evening worry batching and tell me how it worked for you. I'm really curious to see how it would work for you. Personally, I use both worry batching based on what I worry about and how urgent it is for me to deal with some worries. But it has helped me tremendously over the years. And still now, as I have anxious thoughts, I see how powerful it is to both brush off when it's not the right time to deal with some worries, and also take the time to acknowledge them and deal with them, whether it's about letting them go, or then act and make plans to deal and find solutions to my worries. And when you're really worried, sometimes it's also as simple as having someone to talk to about it. Until next time, Mama. Hey Mama, would you like to have some more clarity on the kind of mother you want to be, or you need help to get where you want to be? Then go to omama.ca and grab my free journaling challenge. I will help you every single day get where you want to be.